Yeah, hello Nest family. I dare say that the majority of the podcast today will not be the brightest of reflections, but let's start on a happy note. Let's go all the way to Japan before we touch on the nonsense from Saturday and check in with Drew Jones, because we've all been immersed in the Olympics. That's been a wonderful distraction from the rubbish the West Coast Eagles served up on a big day on the weekend, Drewy. The Olympics have been great. You've been at the centre of it. Just tell us what you've been experiencing in relation to what we've been watching over here, which has obviously been just incredibly enthralling.
Konnichiwa, Gabi. Great to be with you from Tokyo. It's been awesome. I've seen gold medals, Jess Fox in the C1 at the canoe slalom, which was a really great Australian sporting moment. I saw Kaylee McEwen win gold in the backstroke, become the first Australian to do the 100, 200 in the women. So that was really great. But a real bucket list moment last night. Got to go along to the athletics at the Olympic Stadium. So I was really excited to see Rowan Browning run in the semi-final. Unfortunately, he couldn't reproduce his heroics from the heat.
Oh, he was just a bit slow. The rest of his race was great.
Yeah, he's absolutely a prospect. To run a 10:09 and he sort of missed the start is still a pretty good effort. And then I had to duck out, knowing that the big ticket item of the games was to come. Having to leave my seats and go outside and do some crosses was pretty tough, and not knowing if I'd be able to get back and get the seats. But basically sat along the finish line at the very front in that bowl right next to where the men crossed the line in the 100-metre sprint. So I could pretty much look right down the finish line and know that Marcel Jacobs from Italy would become the first Italian to win the 100-metre sprint. But it was quite a moment. It was a little bit strange with no one there, because I could imagine how raucous the crowd would get in the build-up to the 100. But amazing moment to be there, a real pinch me moment. It's been awesome.
That's brilliant, mate. Yeah, this has been the best Olympics for Australia, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of grabbing our attention and being immersed in them since Sydney 2000, without a doubt. I mean, obviously the time zone makes all the difference. But they've just been fantastic, and most of the nation being in lockdown as well means that everyone's home to watch. So social media is fun because everyone's getting in the spirit together and sharing in the emotion together. So, yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic, and there's so much more to come. Hopefully the Matildas win tonight. Hopefully Pete Bowl, what a sensation he is, can claim a medal in the 800. That'd be great. Stevie Solomon maybe getting through to the final of the 400 would be awesome. There's so much more to watch. So great job over there, mate. That's proved a very handy distraction before we get on to what occurred on Saturday. But let's dive in now. Thanks to everyone for their Nest medal votes. We know they're difficult to do in these situations, but we've got them down, so we'll update that. Got some big questions to throw, Jury. So it's a bit of a State of the Union address, like we've had a couple of times this season, unfortunately, on where the Eagles are at. I want to talk about players we could trade. I want to talk about players we might have to move on at season's end to freshen up the list, not just for salary cap and for youth to come in, but actually to shake the place up and say you're not immovable objects. If you don't perform, this is what happens. Your head's on the chopping block. So I want to talk about a couple of those options potentially. Some people have sent through some questions as well. Thank you for that. It's that time. So we'll address a few of those queries too. But so let's start with the game. It wasn't pretty. What did you make of it from what you could over there in Japan? I'll give my thoughts as well.
Yeah, well, from what I've been able to watch and go back and study, we just looked so easy to play against. And we've talked about it a number of times, but Collingwood just cut us to ribbons. The pressure around the ball, just non-existent. And then we clearly had a breakdown in our defensive system in the first half. Collingwood got so many great looks at goal. Yes, they kicked accurately and they took their chances, which is important. But a lot of their shots for goal were really front and square. They'd move the ball through the corridor quickly. So we were just non-existent in terms of making the game hard to play. There's been some West Coast teams over the last 5 to 6 years that haven't been our most talented teams, and they haven't been anywhere near our best teams or even looking like winning a flag. But they've made the game tight. They've made themselves hard to play against. Like that 2017 team got to a semi-final, and didn't have that many tricks, I don't think. But they were hard to play against. They made the game a contest, as you saw in that Port Adelaide elimination final. The list on paper at the moment is elite, but we don't seem to be able to put any pressure on around the ball at the moment. So that really makes you start questioning where the mental side of the game is at. And to be honest, it was shameful in terms of the Shannon Hearn milestone. Like, that's what really upset me about the performance was, I want to see a little bit of heart. I want to see them dig in and do what Shannon Hearn's done for 300 games, but we didn't see any of that.
It was pathetic. It is, it's disgraceful to dish that up at any time, especially when you've done it twice this season, for goodness sakes. Like, you'd think you'd learn from mistakes when you've done it twice and realise that there's a line in the sand that you can't cross again for at least this campaign.
But was there a part of you that was like, oh, it's this again?
Yeah, 100%.
That's why I was disgusted for Shannon Hearn, but I just couldn't get myself whipped up into a frenzy of anger, because I was like, so this is where we're at. Like, this is what we're doing again.
Well, the thought that came into my mind, and I think a lot of supporters' minds, was, I actually don't care that much if we make the 8 or not. That's where it's at as a result, because we're not going to do anything in the finals. Like, we'll get smashed week 1. Even if we snare a final, we pull a performance out of our backsides, we're not going to go on a run. There's too much evidence that there are too many problems for us to do anything in towards the end of the season of note. So missing the finals wouldn't bother supporters that much, I don't think, at the moment, because then it would force them to realise how bad the problems are and that changes need to be made.
I don't think we have a choice in the matter, to be honest.
Don't, but finals can sometimes be a false dawn, Drewy. So you're wearing an Arsenal shirt right now. How many FA Cups did Arsenal win under Arsene Wenger at the end of his reign to put papers over the cracks?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
When I say I don't think we have a choice, I more mean I don't think we'll make it.
Well, yeah, we might not make it. Yeah, of course.
But we've got Melbourne and Brisbane as two of our opponents to finish the season. Like, if they should belt us, really.
And I mean, Freo, the way they played yesterday, could beat us easily in the
Freo are a better team. They got more heart than us.
Yeah, and they've got more zip. I mean, that's the big issue right now. We are so slow. We are such a slow side. And we just got outrun by a young, vibrant Collingwood side enjoying the end of their season with the freedom of the Buckley talk removed now. So they're just playing footy. They're just out there to have fun. And let's see what happens. And we just don't seem to have any of that. We're an unmotivated playing list. So what has happened that has made our players clearly unmotivated? I'm not saying they don't go out there and try. Of course they do. But you have to be 100% every time you play. Unless you're a top 4 side up against a bottom 4 side, if you are off 10% in any game, and we've been off way more than 10% in a number of games, we certainly were on Saturday, but if you're off 10% in any game and you're not a top 4 side against a bottom 4 side, you will get beaten. And why are we off so often? That comes down to motivation. And it's just not there for the group. So the coaching staff obviously have to take a lot of blame for that, because they're not getting through to the players, and the players need to as well. They're not youngsters who are coming through. They're experienced players who have achieved it all. So why is there this disconnect now? It's a big issue, and they need to get to the bottom of it quick, smart, and whether we make the finals or not, I'm not too bothered, because that needs to be analysed and fixed very quickly.
Yeah, God, aren't we horrible to watch? Like, I can't remember an Eagles team that's been like I've taken less pleasure in watching. If you think back over the season so far, the moments that have given us the most joy, it's been Oscar Allen up and firing early in the season. It's been Luke Edwards and Luke Foley against Richmond and Carlton. Like, the joy that we've got this season has been largely from our young players, and then a little bit from Liam Ryan taking a hanger and kicking 4 against the Blues. Josh Kennedy's had a couple of games where he's got hold of teams. Darling kicking 5 1/4 against Adelaide. But other than that, it's just been the youth that's given us any modicum of joy at all. But most of the season has been spent probably bemoaning these lapses that we've had and just the complete inability to stop a team when they get on a run. Like, you can switch on a West Coast game and you can know pretty quickly what the result's going to be in 5 minutes. And that is such a horrible stamp to have on you as a football team. Like, teams know that if you can get hold of West Coast, put them away early, get on top, they'll probably roll over.
Yeah,
they won't bite back.
Yeah,
they'll just let you take control of the game and win it.
100%. So I've mentioned this a few times before. Teams like to sit back against us, but we quite often run over them, or we did before the season at the end of games. Now teams are realising we don't have the capabilities to, and we're struggling so much that they can get such a lead by getting back in numbers and clogging up space because of the Eagles' slow football and the tendency to just want to hit up the big marking key forwards, that they can hold us out, get a jump, and we won't be able to run over them again. And it's just an easy team to play against. And that's just become so incredibly apparent. So, yeah, it's obviously a big issue right now. I mean, look, some of the positives, Jakey Waterman had a good game. That was nice to see. Gov was solid down back. We'll get into the votes later. I liked Zachy Landon and his zip. Some of the players that stood out, they come to mind. The midfield is slow. Like, Andrew Gaff's got a lot of votes. I know he got a lot of the ball. He didn't lay a tackle. Dom Sheed, again, him and Gaff just seem to get run over far too often. We are so heavy-legged in the middle of the park. We can't keep that same midfield mix together. There has to be a change because you can't be that slow anymore.
Yeah, that's the question. What do you do with them? Does Sheed go to half back, or does Shuey, when he's back in the team, and does he need a new position? But do you have to throw the magnets around?
I think, when Shuey comes back, maybe it helps a bit when Tim Kelly's up and firing and Liam Ryan's in the team to give us some pace. But at the moment, Gaff, Sheed and Redden on the ball is too slow. I just think we've got too many slow players there. You can't. The game moves too quickly now. There's too many pacey players in the engine room of opposition teams. Look at Melbourne with Petrarca and Oliver and Langdon and Harms. They'll just run over us.
Yeah.
I don't think we can play that many slow players together. Shuey helps, and TK, when he's up and going, and he's just up and down at the moment, it makes a difference. But outside of that, we don't have any zip.
Yeah, it's a stark difference, isn't it? When you watch those top teams, the way that they play, the way they move the ball. But Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs, God, they're great to watch. They play with this great tempo and zest.
Yeah.
And we just don't have any of that. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, our inability to keep the ball in our front half and forward 50 it's a major problem, isn't it? Like, we got a lot of inside 50s early against Collingwood, and not only did we not kick any goals, we just couldn't keep the ball in there. That was the big issue that then reverberates through the rest of the team. It means the mids don't get a rest. It means the backs don't get a rest. We can't set up our system behind the ball because the forwards aren't keeping the ball in.
Yeah.
And Zach Langdon was brought in to address that issue, and I think he's got better as the year has gone on. He's given us something, but arguably his best work has been done up the ground with the ball in hand.
Yeah.
Well, he needs to be front and centre of keeping the ball inside 50, laying tackles, pressuring. And maybe we just can't do it with Oscar, Jack and Josh.
We can't.
Maybe Nick Nat rotating through, Waterman up there. Like, that forward line is not set up to be successful without the ball. And that just seems to be such a massive part of the way that football is played now.
Yeah, not when they're not at their best, like they're struggling at the moment. I mean, Oscar shouldn't have played. We spoke about it last week. Adam Simpson did say we discussed giving him a rest. I'd be very surprised if he played on Monday, unless there's some sort of recovery. mentally and physically, he just seems so far off it. His body's shot at the moment and the confidence has dropped enormously. He's been moved all over the park. That hasn't helped. Not talking down what he means to us moving forward. All that stuff we said early in the season still stands. He's going to be an enormous player for our football club. But right now, he just needs a rest badly. I mean, maybe the extra 2 days we get with the Monday night game, maybe that helps him. But I don't think he should have played on the weekend. The evidence was there on the game. Yeah, when they're struggling like that, the ball just goes out quickly. So Cripper tried hard. He had 5 tackles. Zach Langdon you spoke about. Jack Petruccelli should be giving us more in that department. He doesn't. And then the 3 talls, they just can't chase at the moment. So it doesn't matter if someone like Cripper or Zach Langdon's putting the effort in. To have forward pressure, everyone has to buy in. Or else they'll just find a free man to clear it. It's not hard. We need one person to get the ball and kick it out. They're able to run it out with ease and pick their passes out of defence and get them going into dangerous positions because the forward pressure is so bad. But solid forward pressure like we've had before is everyone buying in, or else it doesn't make a difference. And we've got 3 boys, unfortunately, up there at the moment who can't lay a tackle and lay a proper chase and haven't been able to for the last 6 weeks, really. So no hope in that respect. That was a big issue on the weekend.
Isn't it? It's interesting how it feels like, and I've said this before, maybe a couple of weeks ago, like we're just so heavily invested in our current team that there doesn't seem to be a quick fix. Like let's take Josh Kennedy out of the team, right? Let's say that he decided to retire, which I don't want him to ever retire.
Yeah, he's
been one of the best players in our history, and then you replace Josh Kennedy with a good AFL player, not a first-class A-grader, who their primary role in the team is to lay tackles, and they might kick 1 goal per game and lay 5 tackles per game. And then you draft another player who plays that role. He comes into the team and, Petruccelli goes out or whatever. All of a sudden you've got Cripps, player A, player B, Langdon, Liam Ryan and Willie Rioli, all in the team, all playing that role. So you take out Josh Kennedy's 40 goals for the season, you take out his talismanic figure, but you replaced it with functional players who serve the system and help us retain the ball in the forward 50. Like, is it a positive step? Is that a good move for our team? Are we a better team?
Yeah, quite possibly.
This is the hard thing. These are the decisions they have to make.
Yeah.
Josh Kennedy deserves a new contract.
Yeah.
He's probably been in our best 5 or 6 players this season, and he's in our best 5 or 6 players of all time. But we're heavily invested in Jack Darling.
I think
Oscar Allen's one of the best young players in the competition. Like, how do you balance that out? Like, it's hurting us having 3 tall forwards who they try their guts out. Yeah. Josh Kennedy's been chasing hard his whole career.
Yeah.
But he's just not going to be able to do what Cozzy Pickett does.
Yeah. Well, that might force a hand on JK, which would be a very sad way to go out. I'd like to see him have one more crack at it and for them to figure out a way to make it all work again for one more season and have a real go. But there's no doubt tinkering needs to happen, Drewy, with the list and obviously with the game plan, the midfield mix, the forward mix that you've spoken about. So I'll get on to this question then. If we were to trade a player to help shake things up a bit, mentally and financially on the salary cap, and then to get some youth into the team and to not only start looking ahead to the future, but actually to help the team play better, who would you look at trading? I was asked this on the weekend. Someone from the AFL.com who said, I'm doing a big story on the Eagles, called me and asked me some of the stuff and said, who would you look at trading? So there's one player that came to mind for me. Your thoughts?
Who would I trade? Who are the most expendable players who have currency? I think people would still believe that Petruccelli has upside and that he'd be worth something on the open market. Would you trade Gaff back to Victoria?
That's the player that stands out. That is the player that stands out. I mean, take nothing away from how brilliant a servant he's been of the West Coast Eagles. I had him in my top 5 players of the decade. We love Andrew Gaff, and I would not be unhappy if he stayed, of course. But if there's one player you're putting on the trade table right now, when you consider what he's being paid, and he hasn't earned that money this season, he's on big money. When you consider that the legs are starting to go, certainly on the evidence of this campaign, Andrew Gaff stands out as the player. If you could trade him, you wouldn't get his full salary off the books. You'd probably have to pay some of it. But if you could get a portion of that off the books, get in a young player or a couple of draft picks, and move him on to a team that wants an experienced runner in the middle, that has some young players with speed and needs some experience, I think you'd have to entertain it, to shake things up and to say to everyone else, this is what happens when you put in a season as poor as this. We need some more zip in the team and we need to shake things up a little bit. I'm sorry. This is the move we've had to make. It's the only move I think we could actually execute.
Yeah, I mean, something like Gaff going to a Victorian club, a draft pick going to Geelong, and say Jordan Clark coming to West Coast, would that appeal, like that. or you want draft picks, or
either one, either a young player like a Jordan Clark or a couple of picks, or a pick and a player, a second or third round pick and a player for Gaff, something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like Will Powell at Gold Coast was initially a wingman, and they've swung him into the back line in the last season or so. Like, that's like another name for you. If, the Gold Coast Suns on the weekend didn't do themselves any favours about players thinking about whether they want to go or stay.
Yeah, I mean, Dom Sheed's a bit younger, so I think and he's got a bit more versatility. Like, he can play half forward. He's a bit more of a goal kicker now. Jack Redden's the other one that you'd look at. His currency wouldn't be as high as Gaff's necessarily. The status in the game is not as high. But again, Jack's had a decent season when he's played, but, he's not quick. If you're going to shake things up a little bit, is he a player you look at saying, all right, do you want to go somewhere else? You get a lengthier contract potentially. You've got greater job security. And again, you take some of the money off the books and you get a younger player in through a draft pick or an actual player who's in the system already. They're the two, Gaff and Redden, I think.
Who would want Redden?
Well, there might be a team that wants a sturdy, solid midfielder in there who can provide a bit of experience.
Yeah. Look, I mean,
I'm not saying you get that much in return. You get maybe a second round pick or something.
I mean, I'd be hesitant to torpedo Redden just because I think he's actually had a decent season. Like he's if anyone's performed above expectations slightly, like when he's been good, I thought. But I mean, maybe that helps with currency that he actually has had a decent season. But it's a tough one, isn't it? They're finding that balance between, shaking things up, but you also don't want to denigrate the culture. It's hard. We've given long contracts and big money to the core of this team, so we're invested in what we are. Like we can't turn things over quickly and revamp things. We've got key forwards who jump high and take marks, and we've got key backs who intercept mark. We've got these pillars at either end that are supposed to prop up our style of play and make us a fearsome team at either end. And we've tried to add some midfield class to that, and we're just missing that pace and that zip and that defensive pressure. It doesn't seem to be a West Coast thing.
This is an interesting question that came through on Twitter from cameraman Joe. So, are we the fittest team in the comp? If not, why not? He says, I think it's abundantly obvious that we are nowhere near average AFL fitness standards, and it's been getting progressively worse since the premiership, with a third worst team for winning fourth quarters since the 2018 grand final. So if you look at fourth quarter percentages, we're at 43.1%, and we sit, third worst in the competition, equal third worst. That's damning since 2018. Since that grand final. Adam Simpson actually mentioned that in the pre-game chat with Fox Sports. He was asked about things you've rectified, and he said, we looked at fitness and whether fitness was a problem. I mean, that's what annoys you, I think, more as a supporter than anything else, right? Like if you're not good enough or the game plan's wrong, okay, but fitness should be a non-negotiable.
Yeah, because everyone can run. Like we can run.
You've got to get that right. You spend 6 months in pre-season getting that part of your game right, and you work from there.
Yeah, and so, mistakes happen in football clubs just as they'd happen all around the world. Is it possible that our fitness staff misjudged the pre-season? Obviously, it was shorter this year than normal because of the later finish. Did we just not get that right?
Potentially. I mean, you look at
not some clubs got it right, and maybe we just didn't.
Yeah, look at Melbourne, who brought in Darren Burgess, who used to work at Arsenal, Liverpool, the Socceroos, respected Port Adelaide, one of the best in the business. Look at Melbourne's injury list this season. It's been virtually non-existent. They've had a couple.
Apart from just ACLs.
Yeah,
unlucky,
so that happens to anyone. But muscle injuries, no. Look at our muscle injuries. All season long, soft tissues, all season long. And not even that, getting run over. So that needs to be analysed. What the hell is going on there?
Great point. Yeah. There's been a lot of soft tissue.
Completely. And someone like Liam, Simo made the point, Liam Ryan's, needs to enhance his recovery. That's a fitness coach's job as well. Put him on top of things. Like, you shouldn't be allowing him to get away with that stuff either. I know there's a player's responsibility too, but that stuff shouldn't be allowed to happen at a professional level like this.
Yeah, it's just a top to bottom, fine-tooth comb, needs to go through the club and just assess what's wrong. But, I mean, we haven't talked about this yet, but we have discussed it in previous podcasts, which is, I mean, it seems that either the message isn't getting through about what's required or the players don't want to hear it, or do the players know? Do you think they know that this is a very average football team and they've given up on the season? They've given up on the season. Is that possible? Or
I don't think they've given up on the season. I think they would know that there's just a disconnect, and the coach has to take a lot of blame for that. It's not working for whatever reason. Whatever he's saying is not connecting. I'm sure he's given them plenty of stern messages, but it's just not getting through, and the messages they're saying to each other are not getting through. I mean, at Shannon Hearn's 300th, we all saw the tributes during the week and how much they love the bloke, but they still couldn't execute in the way in which they wanted to. The effort still wasn't there. I mean, if we lose to Collingwood by 2 goals, okay, but at least we want to see the effort there. Then we can say we're just not that good, but okay, at least the boys tried this week. I mean, the running and the chasing and the desire to close up holes was just so paltry. So there's a massive issue in terms of motivation, which I mentioned before.
If you look at
coach is under huge pressure as a result. He is big pressure. I mean, fans are talking about wanting him gone. I think it's a little bit extreme, but there's merit in the chat. I mean, it has become that bad this season.
Yeah, if you look at the response to the Eagles' performances online, and we get that because we might get the Nest mentioned in a tweet, or it pops up on our feed because fans of the podcast are talking about it. But it's mostly they talk about effort, and that's just the one non-negotiable. Like, you want to be able to turn on the TV, having paid for your membership, having paid for a ticket to the game, having invested your time, the passion that you can only give so many fucks about things in life. And we've made a decision to invest our love for football into West Coast. And you want to be able to sit down for 2 hours a week and believe that the players have the same desire to win that we do.
Yeah.
But the jumper is more important than the player.
100%.
The club is bigger than the player. Like, you're a custodian. It's not about you. It's about turning up and doing the jumper proud, doing the club proud. Like, you'll come and go and you'll move on with your life, but the fans are there forever.
Yeah. And
the fans are the most important thing. And we want to see players who give a shit, who rock up, who chase and tackle. Because what 10-year-old Daniel Garb, 10-year-old Drew Jones, 10-year-old every West Coast fan would have given their right arm to play and we would have run and chased and tackled, got our hands dirty, done anything the coach would have said to play for West Coast, because that was our dream.
Yeah.
So we want to see people who are willing to do that.
Yeah, that point about the jump is a poignant one. So the All Blacks have that culture. That's why they're one of the most successful teams in the history of world sport. They've got the talent, of course, but their culture is so strong. That is what they talk about. We are, and they don't get carried away after wins and all that. And people ask them, they say, we are simply wearing this jumper while we are privileged to, and we'll do everything in our power to represent it in the best possible way until it's our time to hand it over to the next person. That is our job. That is what we are paid and asked to do, right? It's not about you. We will celebrate you. We will give you all the adulation in the world. Your job is to perform at 100% every time you've got that jumper on and do what is asked of you until it's your time to give it to the next person. That is what you are paid very good money to do. Simple as that, on and off the field. And that's all fans ask for. And this season it's been lacking on so many occasions, and it's been so disappointing.
Like, say what you want about Ben Cousins and the trials and tribulations, and the club didn't help him and he didn't help himself. He ran his guts out for West Coast, for that jumper, week in, week out. He'd come off the ground, throwing up, cramping, and then he'd have his rest, go back out, and he poured his heart and soul into playing for West Coast. And we've seen that throughout the club's history with various players that we'll remember and love. Beau Waters.
Yeah.
He's just been overtaken by Jack Redden for the most games played in the number 8 Guernsey. Beau Waters goes down in West Coast history as one of our most loved players. And his entire game was based around effort, care for teammates, bravery, courage.
But the thing is, Drew, we've still got players who have done that. So Jeremy McGovern, Shannon Hearn, Brad Shepherd, Josh Kennedy, they've all done it before. Andrew Gaff, why are they not doing it now? That's the crux of the problem.
Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, that's
so. We're a mixture. We're a fuse right now of late '90s Mick Malthouse and, as sad as it is to say, the Ken Judge years. So late '90s Mick Malthouse, we were good enough to get in the finals, but never good enough to do anything. We just got there on talent. That's what we're doing now. The game plan meant, and the lack of true class meant that we were never good enough to actually have a crack at it after 95, probably. And that's where we're at right now. And then the Ken Judge is we got smashed on so many occasions, and then the quality wasn't there, but the team weren't playing for the coach. I'm not saying they're not playing to Simo, but they're not playing as a unit at the moment, clearly. And we've been smashed on many occasions as a result. So we're a mix of those two eras, and it's really hard to take at the moment.
Yeah, so the solution is a lot harder than discussing the problem. So I'll give you my thoughts on where it's at, and then you can, if we can try and give some straight answers here. So my view is that Adam Simpson is not truly under pressure for his job, and there would be a lot of faith within the football club that it can be turned around, because to me, we're in a similar position to 2017, but I don't believe the bounce back will result in a flag. But I just think that the team just needs to be reinvented slightly. And from the outside looking in, and there are no leaks at West Coast, so at the moment, so we can't. There is no Hawthorn-like leak, so that's a good thing. Leaks are usually a bad sign that things are going wrong.
Yeah.
But it appears there needs to be a freshening of the voice and the message, and clearly the game plan. So whether that can be concocted amongst Adam Simpson and the current coaching staff, or whether there needs to be a change there, a fresh voice, another senior figure come in, whatever that might be. But it appears that there needs to be some changes above the players, because essentially the team is the team. There aren't too many changes you can make to our best 22. What do you think?
Yep. I think he is under pressure. I'm not necessarily to keep his job for the start of next season, but he's under pressure to prove to the board at the end of the season that he knows what is required to change things. So I think if you're the board right now, you're sitting there and you're going, all right, well, what's gone on? What is the problem? Coach, at the end of the year, you have to give us a pretty strong explanation as to what the issue is. If he doesn't come through and have a clear plan on what's gone wrong and how to fix it, then you're asking questions as to where you're going. And he might have a plan, but it might not be convincing. So end of 2017, we were asking similar questions. We had a younger list though, and he fixed things up. He changed the game plan. He brought in players that gave us some speed and some unpredictability, and we went on a flag. It was awesome. And he's got the ability to do that because he's a top-level coach, fantastic coach. But he needs to convince them again now that he can turn it around. Like, he's got lots of runs on the board, so he'll be given that chance. But he still needs to front up and prove it, right? And say, this is what I think will happen, what I'll change, what needs to be done, and we can get back up there next season, and then we can rebuild after that, or the season after that, or whatever it is. So he's under pressure to do that, Drewy, I reckon.
Oh, he'd want to be formulating a plan fairly quickly, I would have thought.
And it has to be a convincing one. It has to be one that people go, yep, all right, we're lucky to have this guy. We were in a pickle and he's going to get us out of it again. We're so confident of that.
Yeah, and I'm a massive Adam Simpson fan, so I've got a lot of belief that he can turn it around. But because he has been successful, that means that he will be not stubborn, or maybe it is stubborn, but he'll be so confident that he's the man to turn it around, that he's got all the answers. That's not always a good thing, because it's not just Adam Simpson that's going to turn it around and improve things. Like, it's a collective effort across the board, and maybe a new voice is required to help do that.
Well, Craig Boswell's a part of that as well. It plays a huge role. And Candace has sent through a good question. Is it time to bring in a top-level assistant coach like Sam Mitchell? I think it is. Jamie Graham has massive raps on him. Doesn't seem like he'll get a head coaching job next season, maybe. He's in the mix for one. But I think you bring in someone of a high profile from the outside alongside him just to shake things up again. A strong voice in there that can alter your game plan a bit, give you some lessons from the outside. Other clubs are doing this. This is where we felt we could exploit the Eagles before. We need to change things up. And a fresh, big, strong presence around the playing group that puts them on notice again and gives them some new insights like Sam Mitchell did.
I'll give you a name. Yep. Dean Solomon. Dean Solomon's available.
Are the raps on him pretty big?
The raps on him have been good, but then there's mystery about why he lost his job at the Gold Coast. Some discussion that him and Stuart Dew didn't end up seeing eye to eye. But that's not always a bad thing. Like, you give the job to Dean Solomon because he is rated as a coach, and he has philosophies and he has a view on how things should be done. And you bring him in and you say to Simo, well, obviously Simo's a part of the process of hiring Solomon, but also it's like, we're not bringing in Solomon to nod along.
Yeah, of course.
Like, he's here to help improve the team.
Yeah. I mean, Dean Cox has been thrown up. I'm not sure how highly rated he is at Sydney, but he's got a prominent role there. You asked the question of Don Pike. Do you want to come home and be the senior assistant alongside Jamie Graham to Adam Simpson? You're an Eagles champion. Do you want to come back to Perth? How do you feel about that? Simo's got to also have, and I think he would have, the confidence to bring someone like that in and know it's not a threat to his job moving forward.
Yeah. And would you see Don Pike as a threat to Adam Simpson?
No, not if things are successful, because then all you're doing is enhancing your chances of staying there long term if that's what you want, because the team's doing well. It shows a lot of confidence when you do that. No, I'm not threatened at all. I know how good I am. I'll bring in someone who's a big name who could potentially be a head coach of this club moving forward, because I know this will work and I want to stay here. So it shows actually a lot of confidence. Leaders in business and in sport, they bring in people they know will be yes men because they're insecure. They bring in people who won't challenge them because they're actually insecure. They don't want to be challenged on anything because they know they have some glaring weaknesses. And they want to just do things their way so that they're not challenged on those things, so they can protect themselves. You can't afford to be protected. You've got to go for it in an aggressive manner, and bringing in someone who will challenge you with a big personality actually helps that. And then, you're better off in the long term. He's done it before with Sam Mitchell. So I'd like to see him do it again. Maybe Dom Pike's too big of a name, but I think it'd be worth investigating that.
Yeah, it's intriguing. These conversations need to be happening now because the assistant coaches like to have their futures decided before the end of the season. And that's part of the AFL Coaches Association mandate to make sure that they don't, at the last minute have to pick up and leave. Yeah. So those announcements potentially could be held off until the end of the season, but it's possible that the recruiting process for a new assistant is underway. So I guess we'll wait and see on that one. Did you want to give us a rundown of the Nest medal votes?
Let's get to the votes, then we'll talk about the Demons game and we'll say goodbye. It's been a lengthy chat, but hopefully you found that interesting. So my votes, the votes were all over the place a little bit this week, understandably, after such a poor performance. I gave Jeremy McGovern 5. I thought he had some big intercept marks down back. He was one of our few performers who could hold their head up high. I liked his game. Gave Jake Waterman 4. He linked up really well. He worked really hard. He was one player who got the ball and presented all game, and when he got the ball, drove us on a little bit. I gave Cripps 3. He had 5 tackles, kicked a couple of goals. I like Cripps' effort. Gaffey got the 2 for his 33 possessions, and that was it, really. I think he got bypassed defensively too much, didn't lay a tackle, but he got a lot of the ball, so fair play. And I gave Zach Langdon 1, who I think was busy and energetic, and you can't really blame him at all. So that's the way I saw things. The listener votes have come through as well. We thank you very much for that. Andrew Gaff dominated, so he got 39, Gaffey. Nick Natanui got the 30. I thought Nick tried hard. I thought Grundy beat him. It happens sometimes. I'm not a knock on Nick's game or anything like that. I think he just got beaten. So I didn't give him a vote, but others did. He got 1 vote from some, 2 or 3 from others, 5 and 4. It was a mix this week, but he managed to snare the 4 votes. Nick Natanui, good stuff. Gov got the 3 with 20. Jake Waterman got the 2 with 18. And then Shannon Hearn got the 1. Perhaps people wanted to give him votes for his 300th. Great. No arguments with that whatsoever. He just beat out Jamie Cripps for the 1 vote, who had 9. So Gaff 5, Nick 4, Gov 3, Jakey 2, and Shannon Hearn 1. That means on the Nest medal leaderboard, Nick Natanui's out to 46. A 17-vote lead over Tim Kelly on 29, Darling on 23, Barras 21, She 21. Gaffey now moves up to 20 with his 5 votes. Jeremy McGovern moves up to 10 with his 3. Jakey Waterman got his first votes of the season with the 2. That's good to see. And Shannon Hearn got the 1. He's up to 13. So it's Nick Nat's medal. It's almost impossible for anyone to catch him unless we play finals, I think. So he's got a 17-vote lead. He would need to get all 5 over the final 3 games and then snare one in the finals, Tim Kelly, to beat Nick Natanui from here.
Yeah, well,
with Nick Nat not getting a vote.
Nick deserves it, and he's not. I think we can safely say he's not going to go through the rest of the season without getting a vote because he's been our best player by far and away. So
I think he's been our only A-grade player this season. Tim Kelly's been there in patches, but not consistently. I think Nick's the only player we'll have in the All-Australian squad and our only A-grade of the season.
Yep, no, I agree with you there.
I don't think Tim Kelly makes the squad in the end.
No.
Too many games. No. So, yeah, I think we'll have just one representative. It's hard to believe we're in the 8. It really is. I think it's damning on the teams below us that we're actually still there and still have a chance to make it and have destiny in our own hands for the finals. I'm really intrigued to see how we go against Melbourne, Drewy, because when we put in these paltry performances before, we've had winnable games coming up afterwards. Like the North game stands out Monday night. We heard the line from the team, watch us on Monday night for the response. You can't say that when you're coming up against Melbourne, one of the flag fancies. It needs to be more than just watch us on Monday night because the opponent is incredibly strong. Your aggression can be there and your work ethic can be there, but they can still beat you because they're a better team than us. So, wow, I'm interested to see how we go against a strong team and maybe that's a blessing in disguise in terms of getting a reaction.
Yeah, well, the team will surely feel that, it's back to basics. It's not even about winning the game. It's just about putting in a good 4-quarter effort against one of the best teams in the comp. It's a massive game for Melbourne. if they want to finish top 2, jump ahead of the Dogs and Geelong, they need a win and to win well. And if they're going to keep pace with the Cats, because I think they'd play the Cats around 23, which will be a fascinating game. So they've got a lot to play for. I mean, as do we. We're trying to hold our spot in the 8. Like, we could be out of the 8 by the time we play the game, needing a win to jump back in. The teams below us aren't too far behind, and they've got a better percentage. So, yeah, it's conceivable that, 3 teams below us could all win and we slide right down. So, we're going to have to produce a hell of a lot better performance than we've seen. But I mean, I see us responding, but I can't see us winning.
No, I can't see us winning either. No, I think Melbourne will beat us. Gawn against Nick Nat will be great. Looking forward to that battle. Different styles, but the 2 best ruckmen in the competition going head to head. That'll be great to watch.
Early in the week, re-injury news, Simo did speak about it in the post-match presser. Luke Shuey's some chance, but I mean, they shouldn't be rushing him back off a soft tissue, surely, after his history. And then it sounds like Barras, Liam Ryan are both at least a week away. So I'm not sure we're getting too much back. So it's just a question of whether you want to wield the axe.
Well, I think you make the 3 players I would like to see come in to change things up. Witherden was best on ground in the waffle. Bring him in. We need some more excitement with our ball use. He's a little bit quicker. I'd bring in Nathan Vardy for Oscar Allen. Give us a proper second ruckman. He's been playing well in the waffle as well, had a really good game. Nick might need some help with Max Gawn at times when it comes to challenging him around the ground. Let's do the old-fashioned battering ram on Max, right? Mm-hmm. The 2 big ruckmen going at him like we did in the 2018 prelim. Vardy's done it before. Put him in, give Oscar a rest, and let him play that second ruck role with Nick. His confidence should be a little bit higher after playing well in the waffle, and then bring Jared Brander in, who's played well in the waffle too. So Oscar goes out. Jack Petrocelli should be dropped, I think. And then, maybe Xavier O'Neill misses out and you bring in Brander for a bit of extra body in the midfield. So I'd say, Witherden, Brander, Vardy for Petch, Oscar Allen and Xavier O'Neill for me.
So Witherden, 40 possessions in the 2s. Brander had 33, 16 kicks, 17 handballs, 13 marks. So fairly, it sounds like a lot of, high marks for Witherden and Brander. Sounds like a lot of chipping around, but still decent numbers. Is it too soon to bring in Winder?
Maybe not. Maybe you bring in Winder.
A bit of pace, something a bit different.
Yeah, chuck him forward and say just run and chase and tackle. We need some increased forward pressure. I'm not sure who else goes out of the forward line. Maybe there's another player that goes out and he comes in for Petch. Yeah, I wouldn't be against that at all.
Maybe Jared Garlett kicking 3 goals in the Waffle team. Obviously, he's not on the list, but he was spoken about as a potential mid-season draftee. Good to see him having an impact. Could be one that's on the list next season.
Yeah, that's exciting. Maybe the extra 2 days helps Luke Shuey. That Simo is speaking with us more than likely playing on a Saturday night. Now the game's moving to Monday. I doubt it. I'd very much doubt it, but it's a possibility. Look, I don't think we'll win either way, but let's just hope there's a good performance there. And who knows, maybe playing a top team will spark us into action somehow. But I'd like to see Witherden in the team, Brander in the team, Vardy in the team, and Oscar Allen given a rest. I don't think he can. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he puts in a big performance if he does play, but it just doesn't seem he's anywhere near it at the moment.
Yeah, it's sad, really. Just on Oscar, I was going to talk about this before. I wonder if they made the decision with Oscar instead of using the kid gloves and giving him a rest. If they're like, mate, this is the AFL. Sometimes you play hurt. Sometimes you're a bit tired, but you got to front up and perform still. Like, this is the next phase of your development, is understanding it's a 22-week grind. And if you want to be the best, this is part of the development. Is it you get good players get thrown at you every week. Sometimes you're a bit sore, you're a bit tired. You're playing away from home at a windy GMHBA with no crowd, that sort of stuff. It's like as much as we want to protect you and you're a big asset for us, you're probably our future captain and we hope you're an All-Australian and, you know, yada, yada. It's like you still got to learn the caper. Like we're not going to treat you like a child. So I wonder if that's part of it.
Yeah, quite possibly. And I'm not sure of the discussions, but Simo did say we discussed giving him a rest, but they backed him to get through it. Didn't work out. We'll see what they do for Monday night. Drewy, enjoy the rest of the Olympics, mate. I think we've covered everything in extreme detail, which is great. Thanks to everyone for their questions. A lot of the questions we plan to cover anyway, so it's not as if we didn't get to them. I think you'll realise we discussed a lot of those subjects as they were. And thanks again for all of your feedback. Please feel free to give it to us off the back of this episode and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would want to see happen differently at the football club that we all love, but is battling a little bit on field at the moment. Can't wait for the game on Monday night, though. We still get excited to watch the Eagles in action. Hopefully they can spring a surprise. In the meantime, Drewy, enjoy the biggest show on earth, the Olympic Games, which we're loving from our lounge rooms.
Garby, thanks so much, mate. It's been a pleasure. And I'll be in hotel quarantine in Adelaide watching the Eagles on Monday night. So that's going to hopefully get me through the first night.
Brilliant, mate. We'll speak easily then from quarantine the day or two after that, mate. Go well.